Singapore wants to be one of Asia's top places for managing the world's money. But what makes investors and fund managers choose one city over another? Well, usually it comes down to a few things: how much tax they pay, how easy the rules are to navigate, whether they can hire the right people, and whether they trust the place to remain stable. Now, Singapore is competing directly with other financial centers in Asia. Hong Kong, for example, had more than $5 trillion in assets and wealth under management at the end of 2024. More than half of that money came from investors outside Hong Kong and China, and it is trying to stay competitive. A new tax bill tabled in June would exempt some fund managers from paying tax on performance-linked income. Now, Singapore and Hong Kong are not the only Asian centers competing for global capital. Elsewhere, Japan is making it easier for overseas asset managers to set up, including through English language registration support and dedicated financial zones. It has also designated 4 special financial zones to attract more financial and asset management businesses. South Korea is also easing access for foreign investors with more English disclosures, fewer registration barriers, and longer currency trading hours, while India's Gift City is offering tax holidays and faster regulatory approvals. Tax incentives and clear regulations are only part of the equation. Investors also want confidence that their money is in a stable, secure place. And geopolitics can change that calculation quickly. Renewed tensions with Iran and fresh missile threats have raised concerns about the Gulf's appeal as a safe haven for global wealth. Dubai continues to attract long-term capital and luxury property investment, but periods of heightened security risk can push some wealthy investors to look again at alternatives, such as Singapore and Hong Kong. And for a deeper understanding of the issues, we speak to Amy Ng, who is Singapore Head of Tax at Ernst & Young Solutions LLP. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the timing here. Why is Singapore introducing the measures now?
As you just mentioned, there is a lot of competition globally for funds, for capital, for talent. So in fact, Singapore has been considering this competition and very mindful that they cannot stand still. We want to be the leading financial hub. At the same time, we need to make sure that we stay relevant. And in fact, as mentioned, this asset management is a very strong growth engine for our financial services industry. But being strong, we cannot be complacent, and we need to keep going ahead. And to stay ahead, we have to be very mindful what ticks for our fund manager. What is it they are looking for? Like you mentioned earlier in the news, it's for stability, for talent, and generally the whole ecosystem, in addition to the regulatory stability.
So what kind of impact could we potentially see here? Could this hedge fund program then increase quite materially the number of major hedge funds that locate here?
So one of the measures announced today is that this hedge fund program that the government will invest alongside with global hedge funds. This is actually a strong signal that we want to continue to support, bring in global hedge fund managers, and if they are already here, encouraging them to continue to grow their presence here. So this is a very strong signal, because when global fund managers are evaluating whether they stay in a jurisdiction, obviously they are thinking about, is there government support? And if you are investing with them, that is a very clear signal.
Now, you mentioned competition earlier, Amy, is quite a key driving factor. How much of all this is a response to Hong Kong stepping up its incentives for fund managers? And do you think that in the long run, this competition might end up being a race to the bottom, so to speak?
I don't think it's a race to the bottom, but I think everyone is keeping each other on their toes. It might be just coincidental that yesterday there was an announcement that Hong Kong is passing a bill, or they're actually pushing through the tax bill for the tax exemption. And today we are also very timely that Singapore reacted. But honestly, these measures are not decided overnight. It is actually over a period of time where MAS and the government work closely with the industry, getting feedback, understanding the concerns on the ground, and then very carefully calibrating what is Singapore's response. So obviously, what Hong Kong is doing, it is top of mind for the Singapore Authority and for fund industry. But more importantly is that what makes sense for Singapore.
Can you help us also understand why is it so important that the asset managers are locating their operations in Singapore?
So besides tax, regulatory stability, and I think a lot of transparency and the support from the Singapore government is very important. Now, one of the measures is about attracting global senior talent. That is also very critical because there's no point moving funds into Singapore if you cannot find the talent. After all, it is an industry that you do need having a very knowledge base. The success of the fund, the investment returns, does depend on the right people with the experience and the expertise. And in fact, having the global talent may also help you to raise funds. So it is really a circular effect. When you have the right talent here, you bring more capital, you increase the investment activities, and in turn, you create that buzz in the local industry, and the local talent get trained up.
So there's clearly a lot of benefits here, but also on the flip side, these are very mobile businesses. They're global fund managers that even though they could be attracted to Singapore, they could also leave very easily. So does that expose Singapore then to greater vulnerability in that sense?
So firstly, we have no choice. Funds are very fungible, talent are mobile, and in fact, the global markets can be also volatile. But what makes Singapore ticks will be how do we make that ecosystem sticky, attractive, such that the fund manager feels that they do not want to leave. Even if there is somewhere else offering similar incentive, if they are happy with this ecosystem and they feel safe, long-term stability is also going to be very key. To your point, you mentioned a lot of the geopolitical tension. Singapore has proven to be a very strong value proposition by offering that stability. So we do need to continue to ensure that we have that holistic environment and ecosystem.
So overall, how competitive would you say Singapore's offer is, including all these changes? Do you think the tax incentives are enough to override competition, say, from other cities like Hong Kong, for example?
So this will not be a one-off, in my view. I've been doing this for so long. And in fact, the current fund tax regime has evolved and has been refined over the past 2 to 3 decades. So today's announcement is that continuous momentum to review and enhance and make sure that Singapore improve our competitiveness. So we just need to keep making sure that we are competitive, we are attractive, and we are the place for fund managers to be.
This is the first step in that long road, so to
one
speak.
of many steps.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your insights with us. That was Ms. Amy Ang there, who is Singapore Head of Tax at EY.